Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Inspiring Thoughts podcast today. We're very lucky to have Kelly Swingler with us. So welcome on board, Kelly.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. I wanted to question whether you said the word lucky. I mean, it may be unlucky if people are so sick of hearing of me, but I'm very grateful for the invite. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, we'll be lucky. I'm very lucky to have you on board. So, and I know we're going to have some good fun. So I know that already.
I'm hoping so.
Yeah, definitely. No, I guarantee that. I guarantee that with the podcast. So, Kelly, really lucky to have you on board. So, known as the Changemaker. So, from that perspective, so really appreciate it. So, before we dive into what we sent to Kelly before, she's had 7 questions to prepare today. So, we really kind of dive into her experience and understanding. But Kelly, would you mind just sharing with our audience your career history, what you've been up to get where you are today?
Oh, how long have we got? I think I know I only look 21, right? I know I only look 21, but I have been in kind of the HR and people space now for 25 years, which for me still is like 25 years is still like 1995 or something, right? Like 1990. I still think 25 years ago is like 1990. It's not. But so I have been in the HR and people space for about 25 years. So I started my career in retail. I was with the John Lewis Partnership, did some time on the shop floor. You had to do I was joined as part of a management training scheme. And so you kind of have to do so long on the shop floor before you can begin to specialise in whatever specialism you want to go into. And HR really was the thing for me. I genuinely and still want to absolutely change the world of work. I was sick and tired of, I suppose, what I called at the time the kind of Monday to Friday dying syndrome that I saw so many of my kind of friends and family go into. Like, I couldn't even go to the hairdressers without the person in the chair next to me moaning about their boss or their work or their pay or something. It was like, right, this has to change. So that was kind of really what drove me. But I think then as I went in, and I will say over the years, over those 25 years, I have worked in departments and teams that have been called personnel, staff and training, staff and development, HR, people and change, people and culture. Like, I've been in all of them. And even though we've called it lots of different things over the 25 years, fundamentally for me, it's still all about the people. It's about that. It's a business and people connection. How do the people, how are the people looked after? How do they deliver the business strategy? And then from a business strategy perspective, how do we look after the people? And how do we do what it is that we want to do? So that was it for me. But I recognised actually very early on that within this kind of Monday to Friday dying syndrome that I wanted to stop when I went into HR, it was just actually kind of a load of rubbish, and it was very kind of policy driven, and I wasn't surprised that people were kind of moaning about everything. So kind of 2002 really I started to really kind of talk about and focus on bringing personalization into the workplace, a kind of individualism in the workplace. It's kind of a big focus for me in 2002. 2008, I scrapped annual performance appraisals. I kind of got to the point they were a complete waste of time, complete waste of money, awful process, not adding any value. So I scrapped those in 2008. 2011, I kind of started burning handbooks and ripping up policies and basically saying these are all awful. So kind of started to do a lot of that. Then I hit burnout really badly in 2013. First burnout nearly made me really ill. I still live with 3 serious health conditions. The second quite literally nearly killed me. But I still remained committed to changing the world of work and doing things differently and putting people first. And so I then started my own people and change consultancy. But I went into that with a focus of we were going to be a very different consultancy. Some of the consultants that I had worked with throughout my corporate career, and I'm sure you will be familiar with these, Stephen, is they go in, create problems, and then charge you a load of money to kind of fix what it is that they've broken. I was like, we're not doing that, right? We're going to be an ethical consultancy. And started to make loads of money, was loving the work that I was doing, but then got a phone call that basically said that my replacement had died in her sleep whilst away at a leadership residential. And then got a phone call a couple of days later. And again, for those of you that have either been exited or know people that have been exited through kind of comp agreements or variety of different things in your careers, you will know really that when people leave under a cloud, they go into a bit more of like Voldemort territory, right?
Yeah.
They shall not be named. Like, we never talk about them again. And I had experienced that in this particular organization where I'd got to burnout with any of the other previous HRDs when I joined. And after I found out that my replacement had died, I got a phone call kind of 2 or 3 days later to say that I had not been the first HR director to become seriously ill, that actually the 3 before me had become really seriously ill within this organization. And that kind of started then, I suppose, a bit of a kind of, I suppose, if you like, a career trajectory for me. I reached out to the CIPD. I wanted to know what they were doing to support this in HR. If this was 5 of us within one organisation, there had to have been other people that were experiencing this same thing. The CIPD told me to just contact my EAP, so my employee assistance provider. I was like, I'm self-employed and that's not good enough.
Yeah.
And so really, I suppose that's where I started to create a lot of this change for HR. I wanted HR to become happy, healthy, high performing. I wanted to eliminate burnout. And I recognised that if we could ensure that HR are happy, healthy and high performing, ultimately we can change the world of work, because HR people then have more boundaries. They're seen more as the experts. They can create more change with their leadership teams and ultimately change the world of work for everybody else.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's it for me. So I started because I wanted to stop the Monday to Friday dying. Quite literally almost died as a result of my corporate career. And then I've kind of spent the last 10 years doing what I can to, I suppose, it is, I just want happy, healthy places to work. And I recognise that starts with people, through people, but I will absolutely not allow another HR professional to experience the level of illness and toxicity that I did. And so I'm on a mission to ensure that HR are looked after in whatever possible way that looks like.
Yeah, and I really appreciate kind of your open and honesty there, because I'm in full agreement. So my background of being in banking for 26 years and then having my own company and now working with organizations through cultural transformation.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for, and I don't mean it patronising, I feel sorry for HR colleagues because they are piggy in the middle sometimes.
Totally,
They didn't come into the job to fight fires.
Nope.
They come in to coach, develop, strategize those. So I'm definitely on the kind of that Braveheart bandwagon of actually we need to get these people doing the jobs that they've trained to do and worked with. And I love the bit at the beginning where you said about people and strategy working together. Yes, it has to be. You can't drive an organization without your people from that perspective. And it's not just about engagement, etc. If we put our commercial lens on, it's about productivity, those kind of things to drive an organization forward. So hallelujah, I'm in total agreement with you, Kelly.
Thanks.
That makes sense. Yeah, really good. So let's dive into the questions. So I looked at kind of thinking, I don't know why, but I thought 2025 sounds far away. And I thought, what's HR going to look like in 2025? And I suddenly realised we're near the end of 2023. It's only a year or so away, roughly. 15
months. To
just to have a look at. So
yeah.
I just thought, what do you think HR is going to look like in a couple of years' time? What do you think in 2025 HR will look like from your perspective?
Well, when you sent these through, because I replied, didn't I? I was like, I love these questions. Like, brilliant. And then with this particular one, I was like, I'm going to sound like a politician as I answer it, because I don't really think I can give a really kind of direct answer. And kind of this is the reason why. I think, as we said, we've only got 15 months, right? What can we literally do in 15 months? But I think we've got a lot to do now to actually define what the role of HR is today.
Yeah, good.
In order to then say, what does it need to look like 15 months from now? Because I still think we have this huge disconnect, as I said, I've worked in the same department, right? The same function under lots of different names, lots of different guises over the last few years, or over the last 25 years. You'll see lots of HR magazines, HR podcasts, HR organizations, HR accrediting bodies that are all saying, this is the role of HR, this is the role of HR, this is the role of HR. And HR are saying we're drowning underneath all of this. Yeah. With disconnect, I think, between what business leaders, organization leaders think the role of HR is versus what HR think the role of HR is. Yeah. And even last week, I saw there was an HR magazine that had put a post out on LinkedIn that was talking about ergonomics, right? And HR's role in ergonomics. And I thought, when did HR suddenly be responsible for ergonomic chairs in the workplace, right? Sure.
Yeah, good.
When did that not become a health and safety thing, right? If we just been health and safety officers and said, right, HR's now responsible for chairs.
Yeah.
And so I see all of these, organizations, magazines, companies, accrediting bodies, all saying this is HR's responsibility, this is HR's responsibility. And I see the HR professionals, the HR practitioners going, we haven't got time, I haven't got the capacity, I haven't got the resources, I haven't got the money, I haven't got anything in order to be able to do. And actually, this isn't what I signed up for. I didn't go into HR to say, Stephen, do you need an ergonomic chair in your office, right? That wasn't. But if we're then all of a sudden saying that's nothing to do with health and safety and that's under well-being, but where's the manager's role and responsibility? Where's the leader's role and responsibility? How do we define HR? And I do think it has evolved from personnel 25 years ago. It still was very much kind of hand-holding, go and see HR if you need a bit of a cry. And I genuinely believe, and I know this through my own experience and through what a lot of my kind of peers and colleagues are doing in HR. They're doing amazing things and genuinely changing the world of work and looking at strategy and looking at, the business objectives and how HR can align to that, and how looking after people, putting people first will create great success for organizations. There's lots of statistics out there, that will say people first organizations massively outperform those that don't put people first. You've got the financial business case, the productivity business case, but I just think more and more we just seem to be dumping anything that's even remotely people related on HR. And so I think there is a kind of defining moment that needs to happen now. Says what is HR, what's working, what's not, what needs to sit with HR, what doesn't. Do we need to expand the remit of HR or contract it? And actually, what do we need to give back to managers and leaders for them to do as part of their people responsibility? And then we start to say, okay, from 2025, this is what we need it to look like. But I do think there is, we do need to be looking around, more data, more analytics, more automation, more systems, more processes to allow HR to then be more strategic, I believe, and more people focused. But I think we've got to make sure that we've got a lot of the basics and foundations first, and we need to connect the understanding between HR and the rest of the people in the organisation that says this is our role, this is what we do, this is what we don't do. And if there is a gap because there's things falling off the cliff, where does that go to? Or is there a separate team that picks up some of those things? So I got really excited about the questions and was then like, that one's not that straightforward because we don't know what I think we've lost what it is now.
Correct. And do you know what? I think it's brilliant because I totally agree with you on that point. So me coming from a leadership background, so I'm not a HR background predominantly, it was the bit of if there was a people problem, put it in HR so I could get on with sales and that in the banking industry, etc. But working for so many organizations over the last 5 years, it's really opened my eyes up about leaders take the paycheck. It's not just for the good times, it's for people. So I think there's a really lovely bit there. And recently I worked to a really good organization where we really looked at their HR colleagues' role profiles. We engaged senior leadership. We've made it broader. And the roles we've come out with is unique to them and that organization, but it's perfect for them. And I think that's brilliant to set people up. I think we've got to get the basics right, because otherwise it is more stuff being thrown in. That people go, well, am I HR? Am I well-being? Am I ergonomic chairs? What do I do? So I think that's a brilliant answer. If that was a family fortunes, that'd be like a big ping at the top. There we go. Yeah. So I think sometimes we overcomplicate things, don't we? It's just the basic. Get some good basics right. That will set people up to do a really good job.
Yeah, absolutely. Instead of just piling all the rest of it on. I think we do. Like, let's go back to basics. Let's define what it is. If that's what we want or not, and then shape it. And similarly to you, when I work with HR teams or or HR leaders. That's my first, like, what does HR need to look like here, right? Who are you not? What are you here to do? What are you not here to do? Let's define your role, communicate your role, get some feedback from the business, right? What's causing the disconnect? How do we improve all of those things? And then start to deliver that based on what is needed for that particular organisation. Yeah, totally.
Because we also get to see, I get to see conflict between trade unions, HR colleagues, etc., because there's a disconnect. Because the trade union colleagues would think the HR colleagues are responsible for one thing. The whole HR colleagues go, well, that's not my. So it causes even more chaos when it doesn't actually have to be from that perspective. So I totally agree with you. So we're getting on well so far, Kelly. I told you it'd be good today, didn't I? I said it'd be good. So going forward then, what skills, let's say we got the job profiles right for colleagues, so in HR, what skills do you think they would need going forward? What skills would really need to be heightened in a HR role?
I mean, I think we definitely need to be I am going to say communication, but in a really kind of broad sense. But I think more so than that, we need to be kind of looking at active listening. I think active listening first. Then I do think it is a kind of, it is a coaching role. I think, again, sometimes because I think of so much of the workload, so much of the stress, so much of the imbalance, so much of the need to just kind of want to give solutions all of the time. Sometimes, again, another disconnect is when, if you as a manager come to have a conversation with me, I go straight into, right, Stephen, this is what the policy says, you need to do this, and you're like, hang on a minute. Like, I don't need you to kind of, you know, spit the policy at me, right? I'm more than capable of leaving. Like, how do I navigate the situation? And I would like to see HR to be able to firstly pause. If you come to me, I would really like the first question, like, what do you need in this instance? Do you want a solution, or do you just need me to listen? And then I think, do we want advice? Do you want advice as a manager? Do we go into a coaching role? Am I in a mentoring role? Do you need a bit more hand holding? Do we need to kind of go through it step by step? So I think if we could learn to pause through our active listening, understand what it is that this person in front of us is wanting, right? What our customers want in this instance from us. And then it is whatever the outcome of that needs to look like. We need to get better at, as I said, kind of data. We need to get better at setting data, you know, the data set that we want. We need to get better at understanding the data, using that data. And I think also then using not jargon. I don't want to see any more jargon or acronyms between any organisation at all. But I do think we need to get better at speaking the business language. I'd like to see a bit more kind of influencing, our ability to influence more from the kind of place of I am the people expert, not from I'm just sat here as HR and I'm going to wait for you to tell me what to do.
Good.
But I want more, almost more kind of presence, impact, influence from the confidence level of I am the people expert, right? This is what you're paying me to do. And then again, it might be different depending on the organisation. You know, do we want more HR generalists? In terms of that skill set, do we want more specialists? What's right for the business? What isn't? Do we want more kind of learning and development? Do we want more talent? Do we want more data and systems? You know, what is it that we want? And that might again depend on what any particular organisation needs. But I'd start with active listening, almost that kind of coaching, kind of confidential friend type role. And then I would love to see more influence, more kind of impact, more presence, and this positioning as experts within the organisation. I don't know if that necessarily answers that question either. But
the best bit I saw was when you said about the people expert. I saw you really move forward then of like this is what we need to be, and I think that is that bit about being proud of and on the front foot. I would definitely see about analytics to influence the business rather than being done to. They're pushing forward with the business or helping shape the business. And I think the other bit for me is around that coaching part. When I trained on my executive coaching, I did my diploma. I thought I was a good coach. Then I went on my course for 12 months and I realized I was rubbish as a coach. I don't know what I was doing. It was feedback. It was meant. Whereas actually really understanding how to coach people was really life-changing for me, because then people coming up with their own ideas, responsibility. You could see them go, oh yeah, I can do this, rather than being done to and spoon-fed. So I think there's a good bit about broader, but also with the front foot. And I love the bit about the skills about active listening. Because it goes back to what does that colleague need, not just spurting policy at them. Because I remember when I used to go through and speak to HR colleagues, they'd spurt policy, but I'd go, I can get that, but I don't understand this people issue stuff. Could you help me out with it? So I think spot on.
I do think some of that does come from just the absolute overwhelm, and if you're and I'm going to say interrupted, and I mean it in the nicest possible sense. But if you're constantly, you're trying to get done what it is that you need to do, that is the business priority, right? And you've got phone calls, emails, people knocking on the door, people coming in, Slack messages, instant messages like help me. It can just be easier. Like, here's the policy, right? Here's the policy. Here's the policy. Here's the policy. And so some of that, I think, comes from that remit. And again, I'm not saying that it's any one person's or any one business organization, any one team's fault, but it's just part of what has been created in terms of that. And I would like to, I think, see around the data, and this I think comes back to the kind of definition of the HR role, but really understanding what it is that is HR data and what it is that is organizational level data.
Good. Yeah.
So, like, I was responsible under my remit, like I was responsible for sickness absence data. I was responsible for the recruitment data, time to hire data, cost to hire data. In a lot of those instances, the sickness wasn't happening within my teams. The sickness was happening from a lot of the other organizations. And for me to be able to say, actually, the sickness is really high in this particular department because of the way people are being managed, or because of the stress that's going on. Like, really, sometimes they didn't want to hear that. It was just, right, HR, you're now responsible for reducing sickness absence. And it's like, well, that team have got to take some responsibility. And I also think when we do recruitment data, if I've lined everything up, got all of the dates in the diary, and then recruiting managers are like, well, actually, Kelly, I'm cancelling all of those interviews today because I haven't got time. Like, I can hold the data, but in what needs to change, again, that doesn't always fall to me. And if you haven't got the influence to be able to make those changes across the organization, you're just recording data for the sake of recording data. And I think we're looking at data, there needs to be something actionable as a result of it that is fundamentally going to create that change.
Yeah, spot on. And I think I really like that point about, you can just have a plethora of data, but what actions are you going to do to make a difference? What do you want to change your dials? And I remember seeing so many people before just swamped in data. And then what would happen is people would use different parts of data to catch them out, not to help them. They suddenly bring out a new data. You go, well, where's that come from? How are we helping people? And I just also, what just resonated with me, a lot of people get confused about the HR role, that it's just one role, but it's a multifaceted, different bits of specialism, isn't it, within that HR role? So it could be talent, it could be recruitment, it could be policy, it could be, but people confuse it sometimes, going, we just want a HR, but what is it you actually need? That's a real key, isn't it?
I mean, it can be tens of different kind of functions, tens of different specialisms, and I actually put a post out on LinkedIn last week to say, talk about all of the kind of challenges and some of the people issues that I had faced within a number of my organizations that, were all completely separate to the role that I was doing within HR. I've had, a guy waiting in the car park for me to show me all of the shotguns after threatening to shoot me in a meeting. I've been dealing with, death in service. I've been dealing with, employees that have been at it in storage cupboards, pregnancy loss, suicide, domestic abuse, domestic violence, debt, all of these things. And none of those things are a quick 5-minute conversation. I am now. I've done a number of different qualifications since leaving, and I've qualified in, psychotherapy and hypnotherapy to understand more of the kind of stress side that I was looking at. But as an HR leader, as an HR manager, as an HR director, I was not a qualified counsellor. you deal with some of those issues that are presented with you. And I think sometimes, somebody said to their manager, "Can I talk to you about?" And they're, "Oh, like, I don't want to say the thing. I don't want to listen." Go to HR. If you've got back to back of all of those really deep issues, you can't just, I'm sorry, 2-minute conversation. Here's the AP number, off you go. Some people need time and solutions in that moment. And that's all, kind of, if you like, outside of the policy, the processes, the systems, the procedures, the strategy, outside all of that stuff. And a lot of that remains unhidden as well.
Yeah. No, absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on. So if we went forward, let's say we're in 2025 now, we've got those skills, we've got the role profiles, we know exactly what we're being lined up for. If an organization did that right from today, what benefits do you think they would see, or clients would see in 2025? What do you think they'd see from their HR team?
Oh, I mean, I think we definitely see a huge uptake in terms of what we would class as communication. I think we'd see a lot more joined up thinking. I think we would be starting to see happier, healthier colleagues, right? Whether that's across the organisation, leaders, managers, the HR teams themselves. I think we would start to be understanding more what our business and people priorities are. And again, I think we kind of need to step back again. What I'm seeing, and a lot of the stats around burnout over the last few years have been quite shocking. There's been reports that 77% of execs are at the point of burnout, depending on which kind of bit you look at. Between 77 and 98% of HR have experienced burnout. These are kind of really big numbers, and I think when we're in that heightened stress, we are just in that constant fight or flight mode, right? We can't be creative, innovative problem solvers, decision makers. We're literally just moving from crisis to crisis to crisis to crisis, just in that kind of, we're on that constant hamster wheel. And I think if we could all just kind of stop and take a kind of collective breath. Again, I've kind of done a post about that this week, but if we could pause and take this collective breath, really understand what our priorities are, and then all work together as business leaders to ensure that it's delivered for the good of the business, for the good of the people across the organisation, I think we'd see a huge shift. I'd really love, if we could do it like now, I'd love it, but I'd love to see this divide between HR and the business just gone, right? We're all together. We're all focused on the people. And so I think if that alone were the one benefit that we would see from a bit more kind of joint thinking, I think we'd have to see more accountability and more responsibility from managers. I think we'd see, better relationships. I think we'd see improved communication. I think with the, I genuinely think some of those benefits could be endless. We just all agreed that we're all in it together. There is no kind of us type attitude.
And the particular part I really like there is all of us are in it together. We're all a team to drive together. It's not different departments and different issues or different, and it's also not you're the firefighting team, dig me out of a hole. That's not the team of HR. The team of HR is actually we're all driving and moving together. And I just think that it's an engine room, isn't it? The HR is an engine room for catalyst and growth and innovation as well, to really bring those people policies alive, and also strategy from that perspective. So I think it's a complementary, and I think there was a recent stat, wasn't there? I think it was only like, if I'm right, 30 or 33% of HR directors on the board of organizations. So if there was a shift there, there'd be a different shift as well, wouldn't it? To actually have a real people function on the boards would be a big shift.
Huge. Again, I don't understand how you can be, one of my one-to-one coaching clients at the moment, she is the chief HR officer, but she's the only C-suite person that is not on the board, and it just makes no sense. You've got the CEO, the CFO, the CTO, and the COO. All are the board, and she sat completely different. I do not understand how, as an organisation, you can be talking about operations, money, IT, or anything else, and not have people in that conversation. For me, it is just the most bizarre setup ever.
Yeah. If there was like a handshake coming across the screen now, Kelly, there would be a handshake of agreement on that.
Thanks.
Definitely there would. But yeah, I tell you, you just sit back and go, really? We haven't got people on the board to kind of...
It's just ludicrous. Like, how
Yeah.
can you genuinely say how much anything is going to cost without looking at the people?
Yeah.
How can you say this is what we need our operations to look like without knowing if you've got the right people with the right skills in the right jobs at the right time? How can you understand the systems and processes that you need until you understand the people?
Yeah.
I genuinely do not understand how any board can function and not have the people person, like the senior people person in those conversations. I just can't. All of them will say, well, we're looking out for people. And you think, well, you're not, because nothing's coming out to me that says this is what we've decided and this is now what we need your help with. It's like, well, this is the decision that we've made. And then it's, okay, so can you tell me how this is going to influence? Well, we didn't get that far. Right, okay.
Yeah.
Why you didn't get that far? Because you didn't have people at the table.
Yeah. And it's the fascinating part about the people at the table to have the clear discussion and honest and frank discussion, isn't it? And the big thing for me, it's probably not a bugbear, but it's just a real passion of mine. With organisations, I'd like to see, if it's led from the top down, you see a real good cultural shift and people going, do you know what, words and actions and behaviours, beautiful, we can see that happening. When it's people are done to and they say you need to do this and they go, but you're not. For example, it could be coaching, it could be one-to-ones, etc. You're not doing it. That's where it just breaks apart even more, doesn't it? Because words and actions really do differ.
Totally. And again, on that point, I've seen it multiple times. When the top team are focused on the people within the organization, HR within that organization is really highly valued, has the seat at the table. People form part of every conversation. People are usually the first topic of conversation when it comes to meetings. The performance of that business is really high. The well-being is great. People are loving being there. But if it doesn't start at the top, the HR function is usually really undervalued, underpaid, under-resourced and not cared about. You've got employment tribunal claims, you've got poor culture, you've got lack of development, lack of growth. People are moaning. People are just there because they've got bills to pay. And I know you probably all love to be sipping cocktails on a beach somewhere instead of having to work. But actually working somewhere really lovely and working somewhere that's really not is a huge difference. And if you have only got people that are almost kind of counting down the days until they can leave your organization, because it's clearly obvious that you don't care about them, then no HR team in the world can fix that for you. It has to change at the top.
Super. That's like a round of applause, Kelly. There, I think that's a really good, really good point on that bit. So, with earlier we said about HR colleagues then going forward with upskill their coaching skills, their listening skills. Are there any other? Because majority of HR colleagues have got CIPD qualifications, etc. Are there any other qualifications you think HR colleagues could be equipped for going forward?
Yeah, I mean, again, I would like to see a huge shift in terms of the CIPD qualifications that are delivered. Fundamentally, I don't think that qualification gives you what you need to be a practicing HR professional. There's lots about policy, there's lots about processes, there's lots about procedures, there's lots about kind of employment law. We know employment law can change twice a year. And really, as you said, as a manager, you can walk into HR and go, I don't need you to spout the policy at me, right? I can read, I understand the policy. And I think we need, and again, probably more of what we've always deemed to be the softer skills in terms of business. And they're vital skills. But when we look at like empathy, compassion, coaching, questioning, influence, impact, all of those things, the active listening, I think we need much more of the vital skills that until now soft skills within HR, rather than just the policy stuff. The employment law is absolutely important. We need to ensure that we are treating people in line with the law, ideally over and above. I don't want to just, employment law says I only need to pay you minimum wage and therefore I'm only going to pay you minimum wage. I think, again, we've got to be looking at people. But I think we just need, I'd like to see it less about policy and more about the skills that enable us to build relationships, to have quality conversations, and to really be able to make that impact.
Yeah, and it's to echo that as well. So I would definitely see where I see HR colleagues thrive is that they've got those coaching skills or coaching qualifications. I've really seen, especially with people where we've trained as well through mediation skills, using different words and techniques to help those situations. That's given people confidence. So and I like the bit there of vital skills, not just soft skills. These are vital skills to really elevate performance. And also to share with colleagues that the ownership shift. Whereas what you do see is if people haven't got those skills, they then take the problem on their shoulders. And actually that leader goes, great, I'm done, it's you. And that HR colleague goes home, can't sleep, working long hours. The shift has changed. And that's where I think that definitely coaching mediation skills push the shift back to that colleague. That makes sense. Yeah. Spot on. So where do you get your passion from? And I'm not talking from a rude sense there, Kelly, but where do you get your passion from for HR and from that point of view?
I think I think since I was born, I think my parents would say exactly the same thing. I just have this, I'm passionate about people. I'm passionate about what makes us tick. The psychology behind why some of us do things that others don't, why we think differently, act differently, what causes us to do all of those things. And I suppose through that understanding, looking at it in the organizational, looking at it through that organizational lens is the bit for me, really. Why do so many of us hate going to work? Why do we have so many managers that can't manage and leaders that can't lead? I genuinely do not believe that any person wakes up in the morning and he's just like, do you know what, I'm just going to do a really crap job today. I don't believe anybody does that. But what are the driving forces behind that? And I think if we can understand that, create psychologically safe workplaces, have the conversations, recognize that, we say, money makes the world go round. It's people. I've done volunteering in Uganda, in some of the poorest parts of Uganda, in stuff, in places that they wouldn't even show on TV programs like Children in Need or Comic Relief, right? This is stuff that sits way back from that you would never see. And yet I have seen some of the most happy, joyful, positive, optimistic, wonderful people in the entire world have nothing. And for me, like, what can drive that positivity for you? What drives that? Where does the level of gratitude come from? I think for me, I'm passionate about people. And I want people to be able to be their best, do their best, be rewarded in the best possible way, understand what makes us tick, what causes us issues, how do we overcome challenges. And I think it's just that. And I think, the probably slightly less passionate side of that. My mum was actually a senior conciliator for ACAS. And I remember her doing her CIPD qualification many, many moons ago. But as a result of that, she used to get the kind of People Management magazine that used to come through. And I just remember, kind of sitting there looking at the salaries for some of the jobs and think like, I could do that. And I think my kind of passion for people combined with that, I mean, initially I'd wanted to go into law and then realised that actually the legal system is probably even more broken than HR. So I thought I'd probably have more chance of fixing HR than I did anything in the legal system whatsoever.
But the bit now, I really just love that, and I could see with your the echo point for me is the same to you is I genuinely believe people do not get out of bed in the morning to go, today I'm going to be rubbish and I'm going to upset people. I don't think, but there's that skills. How can we help people? How can we ever let them have a voice to say, do you know what, I need some help? Because that's what a human being is, from my point of view, that we all go through different things in our lives that we need some help or support, but we need some good training. We need to really set people up to win. And I remember when I was in the bank, I'd gone from being an individual in the bank to then managing the team. Overnight, I'd gone to managing 10 people, and I was like, whoa, what do I do now? This is a bit. And if you think, I think the OECD said recently there's 2.4 million untrained managers in the UK every single year. So if we could just get all our ducks in a row, it would be a nicer place. And I think the other bit about gratitude and happiness, going back to where you said in Uganda, if that can be created in environments, and I'm not saying people go around with jazz hands and go, oh, that, because that's fake, but actually people just getting out and going, do you know what, that's really good and I'm rewarded and respected, it would be a nicer place, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah, for sure.
So the last part for us to talk about today is, now I know you've recently been on a retreat, so
I have.
from that point of view, but what's your self-development for 2023? What's Kelly working on?
This year for me, really, it really was about, like, how do I go inwards more? And I think that was my kind of intention for my retreat. I mean, I spend a ridiculous amount of kind of time, energy and money on my personal development every year. I think probably in the kind of 10 years since I left corporate, I've spent over £300,000 on my own kind of coaching and training and development and stuff. But I think what I realized kind of going into this year, I've done a lot of the external stuff. I've trained as I qualified and I trained and qualified as an executive coach whilst I was in corporate. I'd done a lot of qualifications whilst I was in corporate. From coming out of that, I think a lot of the training and development and qualifications that I was doing were about, how can I get more skills to be a better coach, a better leader, a better business owner, a better business manager, do all of this stuff. But I think this year for me, and I have still spent money on courses and development, I think, that's kind of one of my hobbies. But it really this year for me has been about, like, who am I internally?
Yeah.
How can I bring more of that out in order to kind of do that? So I think the self-development, I don't know really what the word for it is other than retreat. I think of, that really kind of inward looking stuff, as opposed to, I need that certificate or that qualification, or I need that diploma, which is what I've been doing a lot over recent years. And I got a lot of that on this year's retreat. So I was in Kerala in South India for nearly 3 weeks. Ayurvedic retreat. I've had some of the most weird, wonderful and bizarre kind of treatments and therapies and massages. I've had oil everywhere, and I mean everywhere. I've eaten some of the most weird and wonderful foods ever, some that I would never, ever eat again. But I've done a lot of kind of inward reflection, inward looking, a lot of time on my own, lots of reflection. And I think, I've definitely been a lot calmer this year.
Good.
I have actually been a lot slower this year, and I've been a lot quieter this year. And I know I'm still, still quite a big personality. I still have quite a big energy, but this is actually the calmer, quieter version. Based on some of the reflection and stuff that I've done this year. So
But isn't it great not just to go for a qualification? It's about inwardly feeling. And that's the bit I've noticed, that probably similar echo to you over the last year. I felt actually really good about things that we've done and learned for myself and challenged myself. So if you took like comfort zone, it's just increasing my new comfort zone, but reflecting more, listening more, going, oh, actually, what works or doesn't work, to do some good self-reflection, rather than, and I was probably similar to you before, that if you went back quite a few years, as the qualification was the important thing, not the learning. Whereas now, for me, like you, it's the learning super important to then relay. And if people go, oh, do you know what? They're a genuinely good person. They've got good integrity, good values. They can see it shining, rather than you're just a qualification chaser, if that makes sense.
And I definitely have done that. And again, I suppose, whether it's fear, whether it was, kind of imposter syndrome, whether it was whatever, but I definitely had that. And I think some of that was driven within corporate. When I came out of corporate, I started a PhD. And it was a PhD in organisational change and development. And as part of the reason I started off with the masters, and then I could go on to do the PhD kind of once I've got the masters. And really what I wanted to kind of focus on was the courage of leaders during times of change. That's what I wanted to kind of focus all of my research on, because again, internally and externally, I would see us spend billions of pounds a year, you know, on change programs and wanting to implement change and bringing in consultants to do change, and everything was about change. But ultimately, when it came to pressing the button and doing something, no, I don't think we're quite ready. We need to scale it back. Maybe we need to do, and so I really started to kind of focus on that. And I think actually what I realized was the reason I was pushing myself so hard. So I stopped it at the master's, and I may go back to the PhD side of it at some point, but I recognized I was doing it not because I wanted to do it, not because I felt that I needed to, but because I felt that that would position me as the expert and somehow show to the world I was finally good enough. But what I recognized was, even if I got that PhD, I still wouldn't feel good enough because I hadn't done that part of work. So actually, I'd have probably gone on to another PhD. Something else, you know, I'd be like 80 with 5 PhDs under my belt or something. Like, oh, look at me, you know, PhD. And I was like, actually, that's not what it's about. And but there was one organisation when I first started. There were a German organisation. They would only work with coaches who had a doctorate. And I thought, you know, I'm going to show you that I'm good enough. And again, the shifts that began to change for me was, I don't need to work with you as a client, because if you're only going to work with me because I've got those letters after my name and take, you know, not take anything else into account, you're not my kind of client. You know, that it was a huge learning. And so, I think even if I had done the PhD, I would still have wanted to do something else at the end of it. So I think, you know, it's there. I can pick it up again if I choose to at some point. I'm not saying it's gone forever, but I think I just realised that I was in a really good place with my life. I didn't need the stress. I didn't need the pressure. I don't need the letters to prove that I'm good enough, because I recognise I am. And that was probably the biggest learning for me in my entire life.
But isn't it wonderful to go through that learning? And then also, I love the bit there with the client, or actually, you know, we can say no to business and have your own integrity and be proud of who you are and the business you take. And that's the same with me, and that my organisation is, we want to work with people who are like-minded people that have the same values, similar values to us, and ethics. And we're not going to go and work for organisations that do not mirror what we try to do, because there'll be conflict, something will happen from that point of view, brand damage and all that kind of bit. And also, you know, you can say no, and that just makes you feel good of, no, we are right in what we're doing.
Absolutely.
From that point, excellent.
So
Kelly, how can people get hold of the wonderful Kelly to speak to her, or what's the best way for kind of our listeners to
definitely LinkedIn, you know, whether it's kind of direct message, respond on one of the posts, take a look at, you know, take a look at the website, kellyswingler.com. I've got resources, podcasts, all sorts of different stuff on there, and if all else fails, drop me an email, Kelly at kellyswingler.com, but I'm most active on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. So can I just say, I think we could talk for a long time
on
this subject. I think we could have a good natter from that perspective. Can I just say thank you so much for joining the podcast today? So really appreciate it. But Kelly, thank you so much for being our guest, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the week.
Thank you, and to you, and again, thanks very much for the invitation. It's been really lovely to chat to you.
No, thank you, Kelly.